In recent years, relatively in the grand scheme of humanity's existence, every generation has thought the next one is softer or not as tough or they don't really get it. Up until I'd say the early 20th century, up until the Industrial Revolution, most people just lived the same or almost similar kind of life that their parents lived. Things didn't change as quickly. Let me put it to you this way: the 1770s, the 1870s didn't look too different from the 1770s, and then the 1770s wasn't too different from the 1670s. I mean, you might see a few differences between the 1620s when the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth Rock, and then the 1770s is when the American Revolution happened. But generally, it wasn't that different. Then you had the World Wars happen, which is where generational differences became more visible. So, for example, you'd have the greatest generation being those who fought in World War II and then came home to have the fancy jobs and stuff, have the easy to get jobs with the booming economy, and who would raise the boomers, who were named that because of the baby boom at that time, which I guess slowed down enough in 1964 to make 1965 to 1980 Gen X, and then 81 to 96 the millennials, 97 to I think it's 2010 now is the cutoff for. No, I think 2009 is the cutoff for Gen Z, with 2010 to 2024 being Gen Alpha, and then 2025 as of right now being Gen Beta. Yes, that is actually the name of the generation born in 2025 up until we're going to have to wait and see what sort of cultural shift creates the change from Gen Beta to Gen whatever the next letter in the Greek alphabet was. So, hey, I didn't make the rules. Whoever decides this decided to go with the Greek alphabet after Gen Z, with Gen Alpha being the first generation born completely in the 21st century. Completely immersed in the world of tablets and smartphones as we see it today, compared to Gen Z, which grew up with those introduced. And the late millennials and the early Gen Z, you can say, were the guinea pigs for electronics being introduced into school, because this is a separate video topic I think I'm going to have to do now. But let's just say that my class of 2015 was the first class uh, was the first class to have laptops and then iPads be given out and used in class for my high school, which I think is perfectly fitting because that class is literally the last of the millennials and the first of Gen Z. Just like how my brother's class, the class of 2018, was the last to be born in the 20th century and the first to be born in the 21st century. Though I remember the valedictorian at that graduation ceremony he he emphasized they were the first born in the 21st century rather than the last of the 20th century. But getting to the point at long last, every generation thinks that the next one is softer because they have more advantages and it's a lot more noticeable because there are a lot more changes compared to comparatively speaking. So let's take a elder of Gen X. Let's say there's a Gen Xer and a millennial. A Gen X born on January 1st, 1965, and a millennial born on January 1st, 1981. The older Gen Xer is gonna have grown up as a latchkey kid, probably an only child, a little bit more likely to have that instead of the slightly more balanced supervision the boomers would have had, and more likely to have smaller groups of people their age around them compared to the boomers who had, because of that baby boom, they have actually, I think a better comparison would be a boomer born in 46 compared to a Gen Xer born in 65. Boomers weren't as likely to be latchkey kids because one of the parents would have been more likely to stay at home compared to a Gen Xer who would have had both parents working. So a boomer born in 46 would have grown up throughout the 1950s with lots of other kids their age around their neighborhood. You could easily find a friend, make a friend, and they set the template for the social expectations for dating in high school, going to prom, and going off to college for the most part, or into the army or something like that. That was right around when the Gen Xers were born, so that was still kind of a thing by the time of, say, a Gen Xer born in 65 would have graduated in 83. That's something where it would have been still been pretty similar, but the Gen Xer would have grown up as a latchkey kid, and TV would have became more prominent. I mean, look at Back to the Future with 1955. The TV was kind of a novelty compared to 1985 when one, Marty had seen the program that they were watching. The concept of a rerun was foreign to them, was foreign to his mom's family in the 50s. Okay, I'm going in circles here. Let's get back on track. But yeah, it still would have been fairly similar. But by the time millennials came around, that's when helicopter parenting really became more of a thing. like the boomers, the Gen Xers were more free reign, or they were given a much longer leash for doing things like going out to going out or something like that. I mean, look at the move. I mean, look at No Hard Feelings. If you'll recall one of my highest performing videos, Percy literally shared his location with his parents, whereas the millennials, they wouldn't have wanted to do that even if they could. Like if you had, say, a elder millennial try to be told to do that, they would be like, "Oh, heck no. I don't want my parents knowing that I went to this place that I shouldn't have been going." Ultimately, though, what I think really makes each generation think that the next one is softer is because they have more access to more advanced technology. So, Boomer, born in 46, wouldn't have grown up with the internet like a millennial born in 96 or a Gen Z born in 97. A boomer born in 46 would have had to write out paper applications to college, assuming that's what they want to do. Really, they wouldn't have been forced to do that the same way. When I was in high school, we were basically coerced into filling out college applications during class. I'm pretty sure I would have gotten detention if I tried to conscientiously object or be like, "No, I don't want to go to college. I'm not going to waste my time with this." Whereas Boomer, born in 46, would have either had to be forced to fill out college applications, or they would have been more likely to aspire to go to college, and they would have had to put in the effort on their own time with time and effort. I think you get the idea. Boomers and Gen Xers also didn't and have any internet until they were well into adulthood, whereas millennials, the older ones, can remember a time with a lot less internet around, if any. No, the internet launched in 1989 when the eldest of millennials were in like elementary school, and most of them just hadn't been born yet. And then you have Gen Z who grew up with it becoming more prominent. So I was born in 97. Around that time, that's when dial up modems and such were becoming more of a thing. I recently rewatched Office Space and I saw, and Peter Gibbons used a floppy disk, which I vaguely remember handling one. But by the time I was that old enough, like 5 or 6 years old, to be aware of anything, like just to observe it, even by 2002 or so, floppy disks were obsolete. But yeah, the changes just sped up from there. But take Gen Z to Gen Alpha. Gen Z is the last generation that was born in the 20th century and the first to be born in the 21st century, but having been born while things like changes like iPads becoming all the rage. Because the original iPad came out in 2010. I remember when that, excuse me, I remember when that first iPad came out. We got one and we got to, me and my brother and sister got to use it. Although up to that point, I'd already had portable DVD players and such, so I had already been introduced to it. Yeah, let me put it to you this way. Millennials were more of the VHS generation. Gen Z was more of the DVD era. And the younger Gen Z is more of the streaming services. As Gen Alpha, they were born when Netflix was already being sold as a service that you could subscribe to when it came to digital content. Like as an older Gen Z, I can still vaguely remember video stores. Though I only went to Blockbuster like once or twice. My family was more into this local place that got a free movie rental every Wednesday, which is how I grew up watching the original Ninja Turtles show every now and then. Though I was more into the 2003 series because that was my contemporary. Anyway, the point is, every generation thinks the next one is softer because they have it easier, but also that they're not challenged as much with that. Or some might think that the next generation is dumber because they had it too much easier. So, have you ever seen this video of a little kid trying to scroll through a printed book, like trying to use the finger swipe motion to scroll through the contents of a book instead of turning the page? I'd say that pretty much sums up how each generation views the next one. As I said, another one, I am Gen X at heart, but objectively speaking, I am Gen Z. I was raised around millennials because I was class of 2015, which meant I was in a graduating class that was a mix of the last millennials and the first Gen Z. I grew up with the internet being available, and I was among the guinea pigs for increasing the amount of technology in classrooms. Yeah, there were computer labs that the younger millennials or maybe closer to the middle of the range millennials might have had. But I digress. Anyway, boomers also say that the younger generations have it easier because they can just go and order things online and have it delivered without it, which, yeah, that's true. So yeah, the only reason this is a thing now is because everything changes so rapidly. I mean, 15 years ago, the original iPad came out. Within a decade, the term iPad kid became a thing, and it was used as a and it became a parenting crutch, if you will, a way to just make kids shut up and enjoy something so that the parent can have some quiet time. Well, anyway, I'm going to leave it here for the video. Comment what you think about the whole cycle of generations thinking that the next one has it easier. Give this video a like, subscribe for daily videos, and I will see you soon.